quickly. The public hearing starts at 7. The school committee meeting starts at 6. So I'd like to call the January 21st remote Zoom school committee meeting to order. Tonight we'll start with our regular meeting at 7. So I'll do a roll call vote. Tom?
Here.
Carla?
Here.
John?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Chuck is here, and Erin Gaffin won't be joining us tonight. She's still under the weather, and so we wish her well and speedy recovery. So for tonight, as I mentioned, we'll start with our regular school committee meeting and then adjourn into a public meeting at 7 o'clock to discuss the FY22 budget and then hear public comment on that. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Samantha LaPierre, AKA Linda Engelson Part 2. I have all the confidence in the world that that will be the case, but just kidding. Really warm welcome, Samantha, and thank you, and best of luck to you. The other thing I'd like to just say before we get started is just, I don't do it often, but I'd like to, thank all the staff and volunteers and everyone that does everything. These meetings are really just a small part of a small but important part of what everyone does. And, there's phone calls, emails, subcommittee meetings, all kinds of meetings and staff meetings, and a lot of work that goes on. And, I always live by, well, that's what you get paid for and that's what you that's what you sign up for. But not in this case. Everyone is just really working really hard, and I know I speak for the committee that we all really appreciate that. So thank you. So having said that, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Sean?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, now we'll have reports. And is Bridget here tonight? No, okay. So we'll have, I don't think there's any staff reports, so
No.
we'll have committee reports. Carla?
Thanks, Chuck. RCTV had a board meeting on Tuesday. One of the topics that we discussed quite a bit was the live streaming for winter sports. And the good news is that live streaming is up and running in the field house as of Tuesday the 19th, which is great news. And in the ice rinks, live streaming, it was supposed to be done by the end of today. I haven't actually heard confirmation on that, but that's great news as well. And we did get, Angela from RCTV has also asked if any parents are willing to run the cameras that they have in the rink and in the field house, that they can reach out to her at angela@rctv.org. Right now, the cameras will be in like a static position, so they will just kind of show the maybe 1 or 2 views of each game. And if a parent wants to be trained in how to use that equipment, they can actually follow the game and just make it a little bit more interesting. So RCTV is willing to teach anybody who would like to do that and help out at the games. So thank you.
Thank you, Carla. John,
No report, Chuck.
Sean,
No report, thank you.
Tom.
No report, Chuck.
Okay, I'll just quickly say, and maybe say for Tom, I know the, superintendent search committee's been working in overdrive a lot of time, and I'd like to thank that committee for their work and continued work as we move into through that process. Okay, Dr. Doherty, I guess we're ready for the budget presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Chuck. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just want to get this up and running. Okay. So what we're going to do this evening, and the reason why we're starting at 6 o'clock tonight instead of 7 o'clock, the public hearing was already set up for 7 o'clock. We couldn't change that. We felt, though, that there was some budget information that both the community and the committee should see prior to the public hearing. We are recommending some additional adjustments to the FY22 budget, which we want to explain to you prior to the public hearing. So we're going to talk about that first, then the public hearing, and then we'll resume the FY22 budget discussion. In your packet, there are questions from the committee that which Gail spearheaded that orientation of getting those questions all put together from both herself and other staff members. So those were in the packet, and we'll be more than happy to clarify anything that was in those questions. So what we want to talk a little bit about tonight is just very briefly about revolving accounts, but specifically we want to talk about some changes that have happened with the extended day revolving account, which Chris Kelly and Chris Nelson will explain in further detail. And then Gail will talk about at the end of this piece, the changes that are going to need to be made because of the change in the extended day revolving account. So as part of the budget process every year, there is a thorough ongoing review of the revolving funds that offset the budget. The extended day revolving account is reviewed by the director and assistant superintendent. Athletics, extracurricular, drama, RISE, use of school property, special ed, tuition, and full-day kindergarten are monitored on a regular basis as well. A plan has been in place since the fall because we knew that it was going to be challenging with athletics, drama, use of school property offsets, just because a lot of the things have not been able to happen. We have not been able to rent property out. We've rent the facilities. Drama is going to have a change in participation and in revenue due to the fact that everything is virtual. And athletics, as you know, has been a lot more challenging because of the pandemic. Because we didn't know what the balances were going to be, we put a plan in place on that. Special ed tuition rise and full day K activity is also being monitored based on current enrollment. We did allude to some of this in previous budget presentations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Chris Kelly and Chris Nelson, and they're going to do the next 3 slides regarding the revolving account for extended day.
Okay.
Hey, Chris.
How are we doing? Thank you for having me and allowing me the opportunity to speak on extended day tonight. As I was excited when I joined the Reading Public Schools in November of 2019, and I did understand that there were a few little difficulties with registration and the wait list when I came in. Within 2 months of me starting, we eliminated the wait list, offered every family a spot in the extended day program. And the next accomplishment we did is we changed the registration. And as of March of 2020, we had 627 registrations, the highest registration for extended day to point. So things were going great. We were looking good. And then March came around and COVID hit. We had to shut down, and we've been shut down since March. We started to plan throughout that time of what it was going to look like, what was going to happen. And then in late August, we came up with predictions of what we thought were going to happen for extended day for the 2020-21 extended day program. Our initial projections were setting us in a good stance that we'd finish well. However, other circumstances came in that we could not predict. The hybrid starting that was delayed out, with first and second grade starting in October, third through fifth grade starting in November, delayed the start of our extended day program. Going to cohorts changed the whole dynamic. Instead of having every kid every day, we were having cohort A only coming twice a month, cohort B coming twice a month, which affected the revenues. So it was kind of a difficult situation. So Dr. Doherty, Gail, and Assistant Superintendent Chris Kelly and I got together, looking at the budget, decided that some very difficult decisions needed to be made. And they were decisions that we didn't want to make, but felt we really had to make for the program itself. So right away, we eliminated 3 staff members, full-time staff members from the extended day department. And we went from 4 now down to 1. We looked at the programs, the before school program and the after school programs at each location, made the decision that the before school programs needed to be closed from now until the end of this school year. We notified the parents. We gave them 2 weeks notice about this closure. I wish it was a little bit more, but time being of the essence, we needed to make this decision right away. We also made the determination to close the RISE at the high school after school program due to low COVID numbers of enrollment. And we also are looking at each after school program and the staffing numbers at those programs and deciding what the safest ratio is for the children and for the program to run. So we'll be eliminating a few staff members in the after school programs as well. Moving forward, we're hoping that with the vaccine rolling out and the numbers decreasing with the covert positive tests, that by the fall we'll be looking at, or sometime in the fall, a possible full in-school learning return. We're optimistic about it. And with that, we are planning on bringing back the before school and the after school programs for next year. Currently, the registration for that is ongoing. We're opening up to the prior families, the families that are existing. And today we have about 230 families already registered for next year. So that's not counting the kindergarten registrations or new families in town or families that may need it that haven't been part of the program in the past. So that's ongoing, and that will continue on into February. Chris, I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, but that's kind of.
No, Chris, thank you. We had kind of gone over the slides before, and I know, John, thank you for catching up on the slides. Yeah, I think the last, few weeks as we really started unpacking that our enrollment numbers just didn't agree with what our projections were going to be. We weren't sure. We were cautiously optimistic. And when some decisions had to be made, we wanted to give families as much notice as we possibly could. But obviously this impacts our overall budget. Which I know Gail is going to talk about some decisions that had to be made to decrease the offset so that we could continue to provide both a wonderful program, which we love. And, as Chris Nelson said, when he came, his first goal was to really get every family in that wanted to come in, which we were able to do pre-COVID. And then unfortunately, this is another COVID consequence that decisions have to be changed. And, I know we keep using the word nimble, but it was tough making these decisions about which campuses would be closed because we know it impacts families, as well as, frankly, decreasing in our staff, which was hard too. But this is where we're at. And we're hoping, post-COVID, we'll be back bigger than ever. And I have every confidence that Chris Nelson is doing a great job with all of this, and we're gonna be growing, and that'll be the plan.
So because we take an offset from the revolving account in both the FY21 and we were proposing an offset in the FY22, we're going to have to make some changes. So Gail's going to talk about that in the next few slides.
Great, thank you. As we typically do, I would say in the upcoming month or so, we're usually presenting to school committee where we are with each of the revolving accounts as well as all of the offsets. This year, obviously being different, we've been monitoring them very closely. I've been working with the facilities for use of school property, extracurricular. Anna Wentlet and I have been in discussions. I've talked to Tom Zaya, and the rise in kindergarten and special ed tuition, those are all based upon the enrollment figures, which we've been tracking and trending all of those, and assuming we stay on course with those, we are in good shape. Regarding the extended day, we are going to have to propose virtually an elimination of the entire offset this year, mainly because if we were to continue with the offset, the revolving account would go into a negative position, which we cannot allow that to happen. One of the items we're also working closely with Chris Nelson on is ensuring any of the refunds that we have. So any folks who may have prepaid and they have not started to send their students yet, we cannot continue to hold on to that funds without the students actually coming, because we want to make sure we're not spending money that technically we're not entitled to. So we're very aware of that. Chris has been providing updated numbers on that, so we can ensure that the balance we're looking at is the balance that actually is ours that we can spend down on. So what we have done is we've gone through the operating balance, and as you can imagine, we do have several areas of savings this year, mainly due to decreased activity. So happy to say that through all of the transportation negotiations, we have savings in there that not only allowed us to cover the cost of not running the paid for bus, but part of that savings will shift over to help with this offset. We also have had various staffing savings on our substitute line. So we are going through the typical process we do. In the meantime, we are ensuring that any of our discretionary spending, we are putting a freeze on that while we work through this to ensure that we do have the proper funds. That isn't unusual for this time of year, that a lot of those funds we do tend to put a freeze on as we go through and ensure that we have everything in place. As you can imagine, this year, the challenging part has been on the staffing side as we're looking to fill open positions, as we've increased a lot of our paraprofessional positions. I've gone through and scrubbed virtually every salary line to put as much salaries on the COVID grant that we had, as well as any extra cleaning. So I'm trying to free up as much operating budget as I can. So we do feel we are in a good shape with this, but going forward, I will be working with Chris Nelson to ensure that pretty much on a weekly basis, we're looking at the enrollment figures, the salary figures to make sure everything is trending based upon what we're seeing. And I would say probably as soon as about 10 minutes before this meeting started, Chris and I were still exchanging emails on other areas we're looking at to really assess the staffing needs that we have. So that's the approach we're taking for the current year. So we do feel confident in the current year. The area that we were more concerned about is fiscal 22. Right now, the revolving account will have a slight balance at the end of the year, and it is really uncertain as to when the numbers will come back for the students. So we feel it is the most prudent thing for us to do at this point is to reduce next year's offset for extended day. We don't want to go into next year knowing we already have this issue in front of us. And again, we just don't know when the numbers will come back. Most of our other revolving accounts are directly tied to, so for this year, athletics is tied to the student fees, the coaches, and the transportation. All of those pretty much work lockstep. So I know for that next year, those will work together. I've already worked with facilities on use of school property. We know what types of savings we can expect. This one is a little bit different based upon the offset. So we felt it was important for us to come to the committee with a plan in place to reduce the offset for next year. The other thing that I've been talking to Chris Nelson about is that each and every staff hour that is added will need to be tied to revenue that's coming in from the students. And we will not be adding any of the office administrative staff until we're in a position that we can fully support those. So as of now, a lot of the work, we're working very closely with Chris to make sure he has the supports he needs. We've absorbed that work within the central office team. So we will be monitoring that. And unfortunately, we will not be adding any overhead staff until we're very comfortable with where the enrollment is next year. And that'll go for any expenses tied to this. So central office worked with the district leadership team. We pulled together a list of cuts that we can make from the FY22 budget. We did focus on expense items because being cautiously optimistic, we do feel that once the students start enrolling, if we are back full-time in the fall, that we will be able to get the program back up and running, and it'll allow us to reinstitute the offsets. And these are the types of expenses that we can easily add back to the budget mid-year, because a lot of these, the spending does not happen until later in the year. So we did not have to cut any staffing within the operating budget to account for this. A couple of the items are known savings that we have, either based upon recent hires that we've made. We also are optimistic that when we have funding still available on this year's ESSA1 grant that we have not spent. So I have asked Chris Kelly to go back and sort of reimagine that grant and take a look at the funding we were holding either for other items, and say some of the curriculum items that are tied to COVID, we're going to move on to the grant, because we still do have about 28,000 of funding available on that grant. And we felt that was an appropriate use of those funds. And then obviously when the new grants come out, we'll take a look to see which grant they better fit on. So that's an item that we have another source of funding readily available to us. The funds are there. We'll do a grant amendment. The sick leave buybacks, as you know, that's contractual. The numbers have been trending down over the past couple of years. That tricky part is we don't definitively know this number until June, when folks let us know whether or not they are retiring, but we did leave some funding within the budget for that. The per pupil, that is a 5% reduction. Typically at the beginning of each year, I do a holdback of all of the principal budgets until we know where we are in the year. So the plan would be, this would be one of the first items we would add back to the budget. If I were to prioritize this, this would be the first item that gets added back for the principals, and it would become part of their year-end holdback items. The class computer equipment, we've worked very closely with Julian on this. We've been very fortunate that we've been purchasing a lot of replacement computers. We bought several for the one-to-one devices for the students that needed them at home. So we are actually in a very good place in our replenishment cycle for the computers. So we worked very closely with Julian on that as well. Some of the PD money, again, a lot of that does not happen at the beginning of the year. We're also optimistic that some of it, which is additive, not traditional ongoing, we can look to be creative with some of our future grant funds as well. So each cut that we proposed, we are looking for alternative funding sources, or we have a very good plan that as we're able to add back items either through other cost savings or salary savings or any other items next year, we know exactly how we're adding these back. So we feel that this is a very solid plan going into fiscal 22, but with a lot of uncertainty, we didn't want to keep the offset in the budget and then know we had that risk out there. We felt it was better to say we're going to cut these expenses and then we will add them back throughout the year.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So just before we ask questions, just to be clear, the overall bottom line on the superintendent's recommended budget is the same as what was presented to us. This is just a reallocation of funds and expenses, et cetera. So.
Correct.
Having said that, I guess I'd like to open it up to, I guess, start with the committee, if there's any questions. Carla?
Hi, Gail. Gail, can you just review the per pupil line, the 34,112? Can you say it a different way for me?
Yes. My accounting brain gets the best of me, Carla. So what we have done is, this is very similar to what we did last year. We give each building principal a set dollar amount based upon their student enrollment. So at the beginning of the year, they get this allotment. They go through, allocate it to their line items. And I'm sure some of them are on the call. At July 1st every year, I go out and say, carve back 30% of that. I am putting 30% of that on hold as of the beginning of the year. And we do that mainly because, being 86% salary driven, if something happens in the salary lines, the only other area I can look to are the expenses. So I do the same with technology, the curriculum. A lot of the PD, we say the first couple of months, we're going to hold that funding until we have a really good sense of where all of our staffing landed. So basically, this would come off the top out of the budgets right off as of July 1st. And then as we start to see the numbers for extended day increase, and I'm able to take an offset to cover their expenses that we absorb out of the operating budget, this is the first item I would add back. So the principals would automatically get it back, but they don't technically get it back until the March, April timeframe. So that is why we're optimistic about that, because it will be the first item we put back that they would be able to spend in the spring. Was that clearer?
Thank you.
So just to add to that, Carla, this is something that the administration would regularly, in difficult budget times, would regularly look to that, to the per pupil first, to see whether there could be a holdback or some. So, you know, it's not unusual. Gail, I just had a question on the per pupil. What have we seen, and you may have answered this during the last week, but what are we seeing just with us being remote and hybrid and stuff? Are we seeing actually what's the run rate on that anyway? Is it lower anyway, or?
So we have seen specific line items, if I could say the word, that by default are decreasing. So
Yeah.
if I look back to last year when the schools closed, we had a lot of, we weren't using our copy machine, so our cost per copy decreased. Some of our items, so paper, we didn't have to bulk up on our paper purchases. So there are items that by default are coming in lower, but what we want to do is make sure they're in a good position for next year, which is
Right.
why this is a line item I try to protect as much as possible, because if all of the students come back full-time both weeks next year, the consumption will increase. And a lot of the other programs, if I look at some of the NOADM and the math items, if we may not be going through as much, but if you have 2 years where you're not purchasing it, it's a bigger item to do all at once when you need it. So I'm comfortable that we'll be able to add it back in the time frame we normally would. And we're looking to do the same this year, because we did cut the per pupil last year when we had the budget reduction. So as we go through the savings, once we've covered this offset, we'll start to go through and add back those items in the same fashion.
Great, thank you.
But
Sean?
one other point,
Nope.
sorry, Chuck, that I do want to point out is that I try to work very closely with each of the principals, that if there is a need that comes up specific to their building, we work very closely to help them out, to make sure we can get them the funding that they need. So we do have a very open dialogue for that as well.
Thank you. Sean?
I'm good. The response to Carla's question covered mine as well. Thank you.
So we have a question from Marianne Downing. And it's crazy idea. Could we offer any of these laid off office staff and or extended day staff jobs as paras in the high school staff satellite rooms?
And
This
I
would
could-
allow them to keep and or qualify for healthcare benefits, and then maybe if extended day comes back in the fall, they could get their old jobs back, and hopefully we would not need the paras to staff satellite rooms.
So I won't throw Kerry on the spot, because I want to actually thank Kerry, because she's been working very closely with us as well. So Kerry, let me know if I go astray on this one. So working with Kerry and Chris, that was one of the first conversations we had with the office staff to say, here's our list of current open positions. Please let us know, if you're interested in any of them. That's always our first avenue to go down. We're also working very closely with the building principals as well, because there may be some of the traditional extended day folks that we might be able to slot into para positions to help cover some of that. So I know we actually have a meeting, I want to say tomorrow, with one of the principals to go through exactly that, to say, we have these other needs. Will the hours work for the individuals? So we actually are doing that. Kerry, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know this has been your.
So what you said is right. I don't have anything to add.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Gail. Any other questions? Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Gail, Chris, thank you for the update. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering about the impact on families that were in the program. In particular, the before school, which we had to close altogether. is there, how many families were impacted by that? What feedback have we heard? And/or, what's the pipeline, for the rest of the year? I know you're working it through, you're looking at it week by week, but can you give a little bit of more feedback in terms of, in particular on the before school? And then, do you have other people asking for after school right now as well? Or can you just describe that a little bit?
I'll let Chris Nelson answer that because I know he's been in contact with the few families that have reached out.
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Thanks for the question. So the before school program it affects probably about 40 families right now. And we have heard from a few parents with, frustration and some angst, which is understandable. It's something that we didn't want to do, but we needed to. I've tried to work with the YMCA to see if there's an option there to help these families for before school or the other child care programs in town like Little Treasures. But I'm not certain if they're even offering before school as well. So it is something that we're trying to deal with and try to help these families out the best we can. I did hear from two parents out of the 40.
Thanks, Chris. I can imagine those are delicate conversations to try to work through, especially with all the effort that's been done to build up the program over time. So thank you for that effort as well, which, unwinding it is not fun and not easy. And I don't envy you in the situation you're in. Hopefully, like you said, it will grow back up again next year if things return to normal. So
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I don't see any. Tom?
Chuck, just a procedural question for you in terms of how you want the public to engage. Are you wanting them to just put raise hand, first name, address, and then they can ask the question on video, or do you want them to type in the question as we all of the stuff that we've done with Teams?
They can do either. I mean, it'd be great if they want to do it on video, but if they don't have that capability, they can raise hand, type address and question.
Okay, great.
So I don't, John, did you have any more on that or?
No, so that's it for that piece. I mean, we can continue along with the agenda until 7 o'clock if you want.
Yeah, so we have two things on the agenda at this point, the public hearing and the hybrid update. We can
You do have the budget questions, Chuck.
Oh, I thought we were going to do those after the budget hearing.
You could,
Yeah,
I mean,
let's do those now because those will probably take less time than the winter update. So, Gail, did you want to do that or Dr. Doherty?
Gail's gonna, yeah.
So thank you for, is it weird to say thank you for your questions? Those were, I was gonna say, those were great questions. That was my favorite part of the last meeting. Had to throw that in there. So as we've done historically, we gathered all of the questions that were submitted from the committee members. And what we have found works well is that we group them by category. That way we can sort of address any general questions and then by each specific cost center. In the past couple of years when I've presented it this way, I think it just flows a little bit easier rather than jumping around all over the place. They were included within the packet, so I'm not sure if there are specific areas folks want to focus in on or highlight. We attempted to put as much detail in the answers to answer the question, and then any follow-up questions we thought might result from our answers. So there weren't, oftentimes there might be themes within the questions. We didn't see a lot of questions that were either repetitive or along the same line. So there weren't really pieces that we could easily pull out and say, everyone had a question on this specific area or that specific area. So I'm happy to, typically we don't go through and read each one, but if there are areas people wanted additional information or areas they don't feel were covered, I'm happy to approach it that way. However is easier for folks. I can go question by question, but that will probably take us past 7 o'clock, even though I do talk really fast.
Okay, so we can try that. Does anybody need any further clarification to the questions?
Guess I'll just say no for mine, seeing the pause here. You know, so thank you for the detail that was provided. Thank you for the time to put it together as well. It's very much appreciated. It's good to see that and good to understand it. So thank you for you and whoever else helped. I'm sure
I will
Dr.
say it's
Stice
a
did,
good,
Mrs. Kelly did, you know,
yeah,
I'm sure
we
everybody did. It was a
actually,
teamwork effort.
everyone loves to get the email from me because I go through and take my pass, and then I have the joyous task of delegating the questions to people. It's the one chance I have to delegate. So we do send it around, and then we get all of the comments back and we circle it to the group a couple of times just to make sure we're all, it gives us a chance to read each other's responses. We add in and edit. I will say that it's always interesting and good to go through this because sometimes some of the questions actually make you pause and go, oh, wow, did we think of that? How did we incorporate that? So, and I think timing wise was good because we had a lot of questions on the grant. So as we were looking at what we need to do for next year, we had already done the legwork answering the questions to say, oh, wait, I just completely reconciled the ESSER 1 grant. I know I have money available on there that I can slot these other items to. So it's always a healthy exercise to go through.
Thank you. John?
Gail, just going through, I read these earlier today. With the school rental and everything, have we heard if the town is going to be looking at taking any time this summer for camps or anything like that? Is that still on pause?
It's still on pause. We actually have very frequent discussions, I will say, even up to and including when we have, which I think are now weekly, again, the command structure meetings. This does come up. We talk about athletics, we talk about recreation. I don't want to say be too overly optimistic, but I'm hopeful that when the weather gets nicer and we're able to do more outdoor activity, that we will. And then I've already started a dialogue with the town manager regarding recreation. So we do receive a fee from recreation, but obviously right now we're not renting to them. So we've already started a dialogue of how this year might look, but I'm hopeful that once the weather gets nicer, I think the one tricky part, John, for that is how the sport seasons will play out. So obviously our sports get top billing, if you will. So if we have practices or games, we get first use of the fields. And I want to be able to continue that. We're not going to say I have a rental opportunity. We're not going to have our own sport events. So we are keeping, strangely enough, we've actually had outside renters starting to look to be creative. We've had dance groups say, we can't, and we know we can't be in the pack. Could we be on stadium? Could we have our dance recitals outside versus inside? So people are starting to try to look to be creative. So we've started to have some of those dialogues as well. We haven't made a definitive answer because We want to make sure we're adhering to the COVID protocols, but we are having some of those discussions.
All right, I know one of the big ones is a summer camp every year, and that's one that I kind of, if you could keep us in the loop on that as you hear, because that impacts a lot of families as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Carla?
Thanks, Chuck. Gail, I have just a couple of questions on the descriptions you gave with the revolving accounts and the offsets was awesome. So thank you. It looks like some of the revolving accounts will feed into, through the offsets will feed into the operating budget. Like RISE, certain things will feed in, and extended day, right? Certain things will feed into the operating budget, but are there rules for it? Because like for extracurricular and athletics, it doesn't seem like it feeds into, like it doesn't feed into the operating budget in terms of paying for a portion of the athletic director or his staff. Is there like a rule for that, or is that just how it's done? That's one question. Then I have another question about RISE and the difference extending into the operating budget with special ed versus regular ed too.
So part of this is, so for athletics, there are rules around what you can use an offset for. So in a perfect world, and I'm going to say that this also gets into what your user fee structure is. In a perfect world, would your user fee cover all of your coaches, all of your transportation, a portion of the athletic director tied directly to the paying sports, your ice rental, your pool rental? In a perfect world, yes. In a realistic world, the fee structure is not such that it can support that. So what we try to do, Carla, is we basically utilize it to offset as much as the coaches' salaries as we can.
Okay.
I don't feel we would be able to support the increase in the user fee to cover the rest of those items. So you could, if your fees, so if optically I could say, I'm going to take a portion of it to pay for this, this, and this, but the portion would be smaller for each of the other items. I would say I'm taking less for the coaches because I'm going to put it towards transportation. So the total wouldn't change, geography would, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep. And then with RISE, with RISE, it looks like a portion of the revolving account ties back into the RISE director, the RISE secretary, director of student services, and paraprofessionals for regular ed students. So is it split between the special ed students and the income they bring in, and that can feed back as well? So
And Jen can correct me if I say, the RISE special ed students do not pay tuition. I'm going to say this wrong. The non-special, I'm going to say typical, which is probably not the right word. So I apologize.
Students not on IEPs. You've got this, Gail. You got it.
They are the students that pay tuition. The students on the IEPs do not. The reason the offset goes into special ed is it's an fully integrated program. So all of the teachers are special ed teachers within the special ed cost center. Thank you, Dr. Stice.
Anytime, Gail.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Gail and Carla. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to ask Dr. Doherty to start the winter update, and we will need to stop that at 7 to go into the public hearing, but we will start that discussion after the public hearing and the budget. So, Dr. Doherty, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay. So some of these slides have just been updated from previous weeks. I do try to include new information each time we meet, so to keep you updated on everything that's going on. We had another successful week of hybrid learning and remote learning. So this week we had the cohort A in grades 9 and 10, high needs preschool and kindergarten were in person. Next week we'll switch and we'll have cohort B 11 and 12, high needs preschool and kindergarten. So the cases this week were going pretty good until today. We seem to have a little spike today, but I will tell you that overall our community has decreased in the number of new cases. I believe the positivity rate is around 6.1, 6.2% now, and it was in the 8s last week. So that's a positive sign that we're on a downward trend. Obviously, that's something we want to see. So we did have 2 high school students that were remote this week. No quarantining was necessary. We had a middle school student from Parker also remote this week. Elementary, we did see some activity, particularly in the last couple of days at Killam and Birch Meadow and at Barrows. One of the students was a bus student. And so we had to quarantine both the students that were on the bus and the students in those classrooms and the staff members. So as a result of the in-person students that were positive, we had 40 students quarantined and 5 staff quarantined. And we did have a RMHS staff member as well this week, no in-school exposure. The totals, as you can see, as of mid-morning today, this is since September. Our total cases across the board. Largest numbers of quarantining are at the elementary, and that's really because it's a lot more difficult at that level for students to stay within the 6-foot physical distancing, that they're in a lot of closer contact. So we, out of an abundance of caution, we do tend to quarantine more students at the elementary level. As of today, we've also still had just 3 in-school transmissions, which happened in December. Athletics update, Carla did update on a part of this. We did have 1 team quarantine this week due to a positive case. That team, I believe, will resume mid next week. Middlesex League did meet on Friday, and they unanimously supported to continue the no spectator rule. And then the live streaming piece, as Carla said, the field house is now live, and Burbank, they're waiting for equipment. I'm not sure. I did not hear an update either, Carla. So I don't know if Burbank was able to get the equipment installed yet. Some other updates, and I'm looking at the clock as I'm going back and forth here. So the pool testing.
About 7 minutes.
Okay. The pool testing, we are, Gail, Mary, Juliana, Jen Stice, and myself will be attending a webinar tomorrow. This is for all of the school districts that have shown interest in participating in the pool testing program. So we will definitely have more information for you on Monday. And hopefully we'll start to be able to formulate a plan. We do have a group ready to go to plan once we hear all of the logistical issues that are involved. The tentative plan right now is to test the in-person students and staff during the in-person weeks, and then follow-up testing for the tests, the positive pools on Fridays. And one of the criteria that we are going to put in place is that all students that are participating in athletics and extracurricular in person will be required to participate in the pool testing program. You may have seen, I believe I sent it to the committee, that DPH has now reversed its regulation on flu vaccine. It no longer is mandatory for students in pre-K to 12 to have the flu vaccine. And I wanted to have Gail to give you, an update on what's going on from a 30,000 foot level with the town vaccine. She's been working with Command on the planning of that. So
And I
Gail.
will do this in 2 minutes or less, Chuck. So as we mentioned at the last meeting, we were happy to announce that our nursing staff did receive the first dose of the vaccine as part of the phase 1 in the town. Now that they have gone through with the first responders, the police, the fire, EMTs, nurses, we are getting ready to work on phase 2 of it and how we could roll that out for the town, knowing that the schools are a big part of phase 2. We had our first planning meeting yesterday to go through all of the logistics and what it would take. And it's exciting to be at this phase of it. And we're hoping over the next week or two, we'll be able to really talk about what that plan looks like, how we plan to roll it out. But I will say that being part of the operations group of the planning team, it's amazing how well everybody works together on this. We had Board of Health, police, fire, facilities, myself. We're also working very closely with RMLD as well as with Austin Prep as well, because all of these groups will have people in the next phase. So you can just imagine the magnitude of the number of people as well as logistically what it takes. So we're hoping within the next week or two, we'll be able to come back with what the plan and next steps are. But the town is definitely taking every step to move forward in the next phase of the vaccination.
Chuck, that's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah. So
That's okay.
Right. So we'll have a motion to recess the regular school committee meeting, and then a motion to open the public hearing for the FY22 budget.
You want to do that now? It's 3 minutes early. Or should we just pause for a few minutes?
We can sit and look at each other for a few minutes here.
Anybody got any jokes?
Any heartwarming stories?
Chuck, you have your guitar?
I wonder if Linda's watching us.
She told me she would not.
Can you blame her?
She sent her best wishes.
She sent a thank you card and said she was going to spend some of the gift money on bad golf. So I want to go sign up to play some bad golf with her.
The 3 minutes goes a lot faster in the fourth quarter.
Or slower, depending on what's happening, right?
Yeah.
We got 1 minute now. Just turned to 6:59.
Talk about who we're rooting for this weekend. It's a toss-up.
It has to be TB12.
I know.
Doesn't really have to be that, Chuck. It doesn't.
So you want to do the first motion?
You want to reset? I was going to do it as one motion, but I can do the first if you want to. Okay, so motion to recess the regular school committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Sean,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. And the motion for the public hearing?
Motion to enter into public hearing for FY22 budget.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sean seconded.
Sean seconded. Carla?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, I don't know, Dr. Doherty, did you want to do a brief presentation or just open it right up?
No, we can go right to the public hearing, Chuck.
Okay. So at this time, if any of the public has questions on the FY22 budget, you can either turn on your video and voice and ask it, or you can type it into the group chat function. See anything? Gail did just such a great job again. Okay, guess we don't have any questions on the FY22 budget from the public. Does the committee have any more questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to close the FY22 budget public hearing.
Second.
Second by Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, we're back. Motion to come out of recess.
Motion to return to the regular school committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, Dr. Doherty, we can go back into the winter update.
Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's see. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. So just wanted to update you on our vacancies. This slide is the same identical slide that you saw last week. We've not been able to fill any of the positions that you see here in front of you. I know that Kerry has been working very closely with the building principals to try to get some of these positions filled. So I want to continue the update that I've been giving you on the high school, and finished having some conversations this afternoon with Principal Boynton and Jess Bailey, who is the RTA rep at the high school. We're continuing to have conversations. It's evident that the teachers want to get the students back, obviously, safely in person. At the same time, and we all do feel very strongly about this, we want to maintain the integrity of the remote teaching. What we're hearing from our teachers is that right now, some of the greatest student engagement and richest learning is happening in the remote weeks. And it's because it's not an excuse that when you are in the live streaming where teachers are trying to teach remote and in person at the same time, you do water down what is happening, because the teacher needs to be focused on both groups at the same time. So we've heard firsthand from the teachers that the remote weeks, because it's focused in one model is showing the greatest student engagement, the connections, and the richest learning. So we want to maintain that integrity at the same time as the other priorities. I know that the high school administration, the department heads, and the staff have been meeting this week. They've been discussing the logistical issues that I brought up last week regarding moving to the alpha split model. They've been getting data. One of the things that has been challenging in the conversations I've had with Principal Boynton and Jess Bailey is that there are students who right now are under the hybrid category that are not coming in person, and so, or they're not coming in person on a regular basis. So what happens is that you have more students remote than you do in person, which is why sometimes you have classrooms of 3 or 4 students in them, and most of the kids are remote. So a survey was sent last week to the remote student families, and a survey is being sent out tomorrow to the hybrid student families to get a firm commitment on what model they will be in for next quarter. The reason why we need this information is we can't really move forward until we know exactly how many students are going to be in person versus remote, so that we can solve the rest of the logistical issues with scheduling. So the deadline for that survey is Tuesday. And again, some families have already received it if they were remote. Others are going to be receiving it if they're hybrid tomorrow. Other data that's being reviewed is the number of teachers that are coming in both weeks, whether because they have to or because they're choosing to. That's going to be important data as we move forward, because we are going to need to be finding classroom spots for them in quiet settings to be able to teach both the live stream and the in-person if they need to. There are over 500 class sections at the high school. If you figure over 100 teachers, each teacher's teaching approximately 5 sections, that's 500 sections or more. And we need to see with the alpha split, how many satellite classrooms are going to be needed. And again, that's where the student data is going to be important, because until we know how many in-person students are coming in, we can't estimate how many satellite classrooms are going to be needed, even if we go with the alpha split across the board. The other piece we need to do is we need to take into account our special education rooms. The ones here at the high school are smaller than the general classroom, but because those students have been in both weeks, we've had to use bigger spaces because the smaller rooms that traditionally we were using pre-COVID can only hold a handful of students. So they've been moving into the general size classrooms so that the students could be spread out and serviced. So that is another piece of data that we're going to have to play into this as we're determining how many rooms would be available. I will also tell you that one of the things that the department heads and teachers have had conversations about is, since the social emotional piece is so critical, and that students in the upper alphabet aren't really able to have those connections with students in the lower alphabet for their grade, they're looking at other ways and other in-person activities that they could do in a socially distant, safe setting that would be different from classroom settings. So that is being worked on at the same time as all of these other pieces are. Because of all of these moving parts, we do not have a timeline at this time on when this will all be done. I know that the data is being generated and assessed as quickly as possible. So we're continuing to move forward. This is a slide I showed you last week, and it pretty much talks about some of the things I just mentioned. And so I want to move on to I guess now one of my traditional thank yous. So the group of people, and I just want to echo by saying what Chuck said at the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of people that are working really hard to make our model work, and I'm very appreciative of all of them. This week, I want to highlight our facilities department. Kevin Gerstner, Joe Huggins, Kevin Cabuzzi, all of our custodians, all of our facilities maintenance staff, our courier, Dick Cross. These are people that have pretty much been here since the beginning of this pandemic in March. And they do an amazing job each and every day. They are asked to, do things sometimes that, require some emergency first, immediate cleaning or disinfecting. If we have a positive case that's been identified with a student that's been in the classroom, they've been, supporting us with the food distribution program. They've been putting up all of the different Lexan shields throughout this pandemic. They've been working behind the scenes on all of the capital projects that have still been going on schedule, on time. And that's in addition to just the general day-to-day operations that they were doing pre-COVID. So my thank yous and shout outs this week go to the facilities department for amazing job that they are doing. So we really appreciate it. And I do want to, as always, focus on the students at the end of my presentation. There are two groups of students today that I want to focus on. One is our youngest students and our oldest students. So first, the Rise Preschool have been working on winter projects around the theme of winter, even though we really haven't had any snow. Winter is alive in the Rise Preschool. So you can see some students here making snowmen, working on different letters with winter themes. Again, winter themes and postcards. Creating S's for snowmen out of, looks like glue and I believe cotton balls like this. Looks like a snowman that they're putting together. And then we go to our older students. This is our girls basketball team playing game. You can see they're all wearing their masks, following all the necessary protocols. Again, our girls basketball team. And we also have some boys basketball going on as well. Again, playing, I don't know which team this is they're playing, but and another boys basketball photo. So again, thank you for listening to the update, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, so we can open with the questions. We can, as I said, John, can you take down the slide so
Yep.
I can see the? So Will, you can either enter a question into the chat or you can enter it into or speak into your audio with your camera on. So I guess I'd open it up to the committee first.
John Parks has his hand up. Chuck.
Yeah, mine didn't work for some reason. John?
Yeah, John, point of clarification, if you could. You said that you've got students that are in the hybrid method currently that are not making it to classes. Are we following up with those families just to make sure everything's okay?
Yes, yes, we are.
Thank you.
Tom?
Thanks, Chuck. John, thanks for the update and thanks for the additional detail. I think that's what everybody's looking for. And thank you to Mrs. Boynton and the department heads are putting their heads together to try and figure out the solution. It's clear they're hearing the public, but when they're putting out the information they're putting out and trying to figure out how best to make it work. The question I have is with regards to the survey that's going out to the hybrid students. The presentation said it was going out to the students. You mentioned it was going to the families. Just so the public knows what to look for, whether they need to talk to their child or something like that to make sure the survey was received and answered. Do you know which one it's going to, or should we clarify that so people know what to look for?
I can find it out. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out why I can't.
I just
Oh, there we
stopped
go.
you. I stopped you, so you're good now. But
All right. I'm sorry, Tom.
No
I was
problem.
trying to figure it out. What was your question?
So do we know if the survey, I guess two parts. You said one was sent already to the remote students, but you also then started saying families. So is it to the parents? Is it to the student? Is it to both? So people know what to look for, right?
I believe it's going to the families.
Okay, so the parents should expect to see a survey come in their inbox over the weekend about what their child is going to do essentially for second semester. Is
That's third quarter, just third quarter. Just
a quarter commitment essentially at this point.
Correct.
Okay. And one more question, Chuck, if you may.
Sure.
Dr. Dory, you also mentioned that there's some juggling of classrooms because some of our special education students had to move out of their smaller classrooms into bigger classrooms. In parallel, you mentioned that some of our in-person, for lack of a better way to say, regular ed classrooms are at 3 or 4 people at the current time. Are we considering, and with the survey information we're going to receive, are we considering that some of the regular education might go into the smaller classrooms because that's all the space they'll need as part of the problem solving?
That's part of the data collection and then analysis. So if there are classes that only have a handful of students and they can fit in a smaller space with the proper distancing, yes, that switch will occur.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for the detail.
So John, I really like the idea about other activities to be able to get together and socially distance, and that's important to get everyone together. So thank you for that. My question, and this not being disrespectful, but what you get a sense as to when the timeline, because that's kind of a letdown when you look at that slide and it says no timeline has been established. You get a sense as to when we'll know that, or?
They're working as quickly as they can. They did have a few challenges this week, Chuck, that slowed down the progress. The other things that they had to deal with. So
Sure.
I know they're working as hard as they can on it.
Okay, thank you. Carla?
Thanks, John, for the update. It's my understanding that the critical piece of this is to find out from each student or from each family what the student is planning to do, right? So they have a good idea of what the numbers are, so they can make make calculated decisions as to how can we fit, how many students do we have who are going to come into the school, how many students are going to be fully remote, so they can shuffle around and figure out where students are able to fit, right?
That's correct.
Which is the one piece of it, I guess. And then the other piece of it is the teacher situation, right? And who's in, who's not, and how they're covering classrooms. Do they need satellite classrooms? How many do they need, and what that coverage looks like?
Correct.
Because it's my understanding that they want to have definitive answers and very calculated answers and decisions, right? So they'll know exactly what they need. And then I'm hoping if they need help from parents, we certainly can gather parents to come in and potentially fill in gaps if it's helping out, monitoring a bathroom or monitoring a hallway or whatever the situation is. So I really appreciate I know last week at the meeting, we had a lot of department heads chime in, and I know they're working hard along with the staff at the high school and Kate and her team. So I really appreciate that, and that this seems like it's starting to hopefully getting to a point where we're able to kind of see where we're at. So I encourage everybody to send in your responses to that survey as quickly as you can, so they can get that piece of it moving. So can you clarify or give any information as to those extracurricular activities that they're looking at? Are they looking at class events to do? Because I know a lot of like the senior parents are really interested in brainstorming on that. Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, I don't want to overspeak. I know that they talked about today trying to figure out, I think it is going to be class type activities. Yes.
Okay.
I did, beyond that, I don't know the details.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? And any from the public? Okay, I don't see any. Do you see any, Tom? No.
No, I was just going to say, since we had so many late joins, I'm not sure if they can see the full chat history, but if you do want to speak, just, type raise in the chat window and type your address, and we'll see your name as long as your name is already in there, so we can make sure we comply with policy. And it doesn't look like any. Chuck, I don't see any either, so.
Okay. I guess that's the full agenda.
Don't sound so disappointed, Chuck.
It's good to be done at 7:20 instead of 10 or 11 at night.
I don't know what to do with myself now. Chuck, can I ask an agenda question?
Sure.
Future agenda question. I think we have the controversial issues policy, the second reading on the at least on the schedule for next week, if I'm not mistaken. It occurred to me that we just had a very good real life test of that policy. I don't know how much of an opportunity, John, you had to engage with some of the student groups and some of the teachers and things like that. I want to feel really confident going into that second reading that we've sort of given. Yep, go ahead, Chuck.
I can jump in. Sorry, Sean. So I did have a conversation with Dr. Doherty today about that. And it's my, I think with, all these conversations that you just alluded to there going on, I'm going to delay that on the agenda for that meeting. So that won't be on that agenda. I believe that would have been next Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not going to be on the agenda, Sean.
Sounds good. Thank you.
To answer your question, though, Sean, I have had discussions with student groups and staff.
Chuck, in terms of future agenda and then future nights of availability for the committee, do you want to, provide an update from the conversation with Dorothy?
I don't have that list in front of those dates right in front of me. I was going to do that Monday.
Okay.
So what, I think everyone knows, but in case the public doesn't know, what Tom is referring to, Dorothy is the consultant we're using for the superintendent search, and Tom and Gail and I had a call Wednesday morning or yesterday morning to discuss, because the search will be coming to a close from the search committee's interview process next week, and we will be announcing finalists on the 28th. So what Tom is referring to is then dates after that for us to meet. So I was going to get my ducks in order and kind of lay those out on Monday night for the committee. It is my desire just to possibly find a way for us to do that in person, socially distance, and have the public potentially participate remotely. That's kind of, I mean, thanks for bringing that up, Tom, because maybe it's a good segue into, it wasn't on the agenda, so, but we're not voting on anything, but segue into any of the committee who doesn't feel they'd like to do that in person or not. All right, just anyone's opinions on that. John, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, Chuck, I've got 2 health issues that I won't step into an in-person situation right now.
Okay, so one of the things that I was looking, I'm sorry?
I can do that remotely still, as long as we do a vote.
Correct. So that's one of the things that I was going to look into was you can do it remotely, and I believe as long as we have a quorum in public, you can vote remotely.
Correct.
So
That is correct. You need a public quorum.
Yeah. If there was anyone other than, in addition to you, then we would not be able to vote.
I mean, we'd have to, I mean, we don't know Erin because she's not here right now, right? But we could have 2 people participate remotely and meet quorum as long as 4 of us were able to participate in person.
Right. I'm sorry. I was thinking, yeah, well, you're right. We need 4 in person.
Chuck, how do you plan when this is a public meeting to keep
Can you speak up a little, John? I'm having trouble. Sorry.
How do you plan on, if this is going to be a public meeting, keeping the public out of it? I don't think that's going to be allowed.
Well, I just said we would remote the public in.
I don't know if that's allowed. I mean, even our town meeting, we have to provide a space for the public to come. And that was a remote town meeting. So just if we could clarify that, because I don't want a packed library with no way to socially distance, but you can't shut down a public meeting like that.
Yeah, so those are all, that's a good question. And those are things that I guess for the purposes of tonight is I've heard what you had to say, John. I guess I'm trying to get a sense of the committee. If no one other than me is interested in pursuing that, we won't. But if others think that it's worth looking into further, then I would want to get on that tomorrow to figure out logistically how to do it, if we can do it. Carla, did you have something?
Yeah, thanks for proposing that, Chuck. I would be interested in attending interviews in person. This is a really important piece of what we're doing, and I would love that. From my understanding, just from our listserv and seeing what other school committees have done for in-person meetings, I know some of the school committees have allowed their school committee members who want to be in person, and those who are more comfortable being remote to be remote and being able to dial in, so to speak. And then their public comment portion of that meeting, they've made accommodations for that to be some type of dial in as well. So we still have public access. People school committee members who would like to be at home are at home, and school committee members, from what I even understand, they even had staff in certain school committee meetings that the staff could stay home as well. But school committee members who wanted to be in public were able to do that socially distant. Others were able to be home, but the public was able to make public comments similarly to what we do here in our remote meetings. So, thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I would be in favor of being in person when we have a candidate that can be in person too. Without saying too much, I'll just leave it there. All right. Yeah, I do I hear John's concern. I do think we should just double check with Colby all the COVID related protocols and what's necessary and all that kind of fun stuff to make sure we're aligned. I know what Carla's referring to as well. Some other school committee members, school committees seem to have been inching the line a little bit about public participation, right? We might need to do a registration. I do think, it would probably be more likely to be the PAC than the library, just in case. RCTV is here recording now, but they recorded town meeting from there, so maybe they'd be ready and able to do that as well. This is a critical hire. So if we could allow public participation in there in a socially distanced way, without causing, an excessive amount of concern for the school the next day and the cleanliness of the PAC for the school the next day, which is the other concern I would put out there, right? Wherever we're doing this, that needs to be cleaned that night for the next day's school. So that's the other logistical issue to make sure we're due on, because we are looking at, our nighttime, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever, which means there's school the next day as well that has to be addressed. So I like the idea. I do think it's important when that candidate can be in person as well, that we're in person, but if the candidate or set of candidates cannot be in person, it may not make sense to have that extra overhead, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, no, I agree with essentially everything that Tom just said. And John, I would just say, my recollection is there was part of the original executive order when everything first happened in March. The governor allowed this model, and unless it was overwritten by some of the legislation passed later in the year, I'm pretty sure that's still in place, that the committee can meet, that public meetings can meet in person as long as they provide adequate access remotely for the public to participate. I think that's all still in place. So obviously we'll confirm with council, but that option does appear to be available to us.
Thank you, Sean. So I will discuss with Dorothy tomorrow, as well as, to Tom's suggestion, Colby, just to tell her what we're up to, just to make sure that we don't miss anything. And then have I'll have a report back to the committee on Monday night. Sean, did you have something else, or is that?
Yeah, one thing just occurred to me that's maybe an argument against doing this, and I'll just throw it out there. Not knowing the specifics of what Tom was alluding to in terms of certain candidates and that kind of thing, there could be a concern that our perspectives on candidates might be skewed by in-person versus remote attendance on behalf of the candidate, when that's not really the fault of the candidate under the current circumstances. Yeah. So just one thing to consider.
So what I will, you're absolutely right. What I would tell, not Colby, Dorothy, is that she will need to get in touch with all of the finalists and at the appropriate time and tell them it's going to be in person. If for some reason somebody can't, that's okay, but then I think we'll have to do the same thing for everybody. I don't want to have some people remote and some people in person. I don't think, to your point, that that's necessarily a level playing field. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, my concern would be that we'd be putting pressure on somebody to take a risk that they, maybe shouldn't take or may not be comfortable with, to try to be in person if other candidates are. So we should just be conscientious of that.
Okay. Anyone else? Carla?
Sorry if I'm maybe saying something that's obvious, but I'm not being since I don't have access to the candidates, I would assume that the candidates are already in a school system and probably already working at school and in person. So, but just throwing that out there. Hopefully it won't present a problem for people to be in person.
Yeah, there's, you know, that's something that's to be determined. And as I said, it has to be a level playing field. So we'll just have to deal with that and make a decision on that one at the appropriate time. Anybody else? Any other motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
John,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Thank you, everybody. And Samantha, you survived your first school committee meeting. So
They're
thank
not
you,
all like
everybody.
this. I'll get used to it.
Don't tell Linda we got out at 7:35.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Thank
Good night,
Good
all.
night, everybody. Thank you.